And welcome into PressBox Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles of PressBox and PressBoxOnline.com. With me is Gary Stein. Gary, how are you this evening?
Doing great, Stanley. What happened to you, bud?
I have no idea, and my name has changed. I'll change it as we start to talk.
Good
Joining
call.
us for our first football huddle of the season is PressBox's Ravens reporter, Bo Smolka. Bo, how are you? You're good?
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. And our special guest from up in Columbus, Ohio, the former editor of BaltimoreRavens.com and a contributor. And she also was the brains behind Man of the Crowd, the podcast about John Harbaugh. We are here tonight to talk a little bit about the Ravens, and we will, in just a moment, have to tell you a little bit about our sponsor that pays for these. PressBox Live is brought to you by C3 American Exteriors. You can go to their website at c3america.com to find out how you can get a brand new roof for just the cost of your insurance deductible. And as I say every Monday and Wednesday night when we do these Zooms, if you own a home, there's no greater expense you'll have than replacing or fixing your roof. You got to know the people that you're dealing with, like them, and most importantly, trust them. And those three boxes are checked for me by C3 American Exteriors. I really do know one of the owners of the company, so I can say that in all sincerity. All right, now time to talk some football, and we've got a good panel to do it with. Bo, I want to start with you. There's a million things to talk about, but one of the things I noticed in prepping tonight was the Ravens' schedule this year. They go from, I think it's October the 3rd, they play away, and then they don't play away again until November the 11th. They have the bye and 4 home games in a row. Am I correct on that?
It's a strange schedule. I have it right here. I think you are correct on that because they have the bye comes in. Yeah. And it's funny because when you talk to them, they always try to downplay the schedule. They're not going to say, I honestly think it's a tough schedule right off the bat. I don't think this trip to Las Vegas is going to be any fun at all. And then they have to come home and play the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a tough ask right off the gate. And it's going to be a short week before facing the Chiefs. So the schedule is what it is. It's what they'll say every year, but that is kind of a quirk.
But for a
set it
team
up that way.
For a team that's playing 17 games for the first time, it seems like it's sort of adjustable to take some pressure off of things.
Well, it is certainly nice. I mean, there's no question about that. You got to make that up some other place, obviously. But yeah, you're right. 5 weeks that won't have to go anywhere.
All right, Sarah. Before we turn you over to Gary for a couple questions, what are you finding most interesting about training camp this year?
Well, I find that the defense is obviously way ahead of the offense. I think, as with almost any Ravens defense, you have a chance to be top 5 in the league, and I think that they could be even better. They're looking really good. On the offensive side, due to injuries, I think there are still some questions. There's obviously a question at left guard. I think that's the biggest question left on the offensive line, especially since Cleveland has been injured. And that's who I kind of was hoping would come in and take it over, but you can't do that if you're not available. I expect him to play in this preseason game coming up. And then obviously with all the injuries at wide receiver, it's hard to really figure out what's going to happen with this passing game. We know who the Ravens are. On offense, they are a power, stuff the ball down your face. You know what we're going to do, and we're going to do it to you anyway. And we're going to knock the snot out of you. So we know that's that. We're hoping that the Ravens can bring more harmony with the passing attack. But it's just unclear if that's going to happen. You still think it can? I think that some of the top wide receivers will be ready by week 1. I think they're being conservative there, but I think those are the top level takeaways for now.
Gary, go ahead.
Just a quick comment before questions, Stan, on your comment about the schedule.
Yeah.
What I think is even more interesting about the schedule is the Ravens have only one division game in the first 10 weeks of the season. 5 out of their last 7 games are in the division, and 2 games against Cleveland within 3 weeks. So, I think the last 7 weeks of the season are going to determine, and as they always do, but it's really going to determine what happens in the division. Sarah, I wanted to go back to you real quick and just maybe zoom out a little bit and give us a little bit more of an overall. Here we are. We're 2 weeks into the preseason. We've got the one final game against the Redskins. It's kind of weird because usually that last preseason game is a nothing game, but you actually have some things going on in this preseason game. But just overall, the trade of Sean Wade today, the Ravens getting some valuable draft picks. So where are the Ravens right now with one preseason game left as far as their season is concerned?
Just to be clear, Gary, you said they traded Sean Wade and not Marlon Humphrey, correct? Because I've been getting a lot of emotional feedback on this, as if the Ravens had just traded away Marlon Humphrey and not their 5th round rookie, which I'm sure we'll talk about more with that trade. But
well, I think it's just amazing that the Ravens have basically cornered the market on drafting lower round players and converting them into more draft capital somehow later on. I mean, it's just ridiculous what this team does.
It is ridiculous. And here's what Eric DaCosta gets for his 5th round picks. He gets a Calais Campbell. He gets a Marcus Peters. When he wants a 5th round pick, he gives up a Sean Wade or a Kyrie Vedvik. Okay, that's like how he does things. And so to me, Eric DaCosta is in terms of trades, it's just been phenomenal, I think, since he's taken over as GM. But to your question about where the Ravens are as they head into the last preseason game, I feel like this might be the first time we'll see Lamar. Maybe I think that the way Greg Roman spoke at the podium the other days, he gave some of his comments that made me feel like, okay, we might see a little bit of Lamar. And I think that might happen because you have a little bit more stability on the offensive line. They looked much better in the second preseason game than the first, and there was no reason to put Lamar out there. And so again, it's kind of what I said earlier. I think we know what we have in the defense. It's one of the best defenses in the game. We know what we have in the run game. The question is the passing game. And I think for the first time, we'll see Lamar on TV. The reporters and the team know what they have in Lamar. And so that has always been the one question since the end of last season. Can the Ravens get enough from their passing attack to put them over the hump? Because to me, all the Ravens did everything in the offseason that they needed to do, plugging holes, developing rookies and getting them to the second year. I mean, it's all there on paper. And so it is that last question mark. And so we're not going to know until week 1 where this passing game is. And it might even take longer because to me, the Ravens are going to have to depend more on defense for the first quarter to let their offense catch up, which is somewhat true for many teams. So I think it'll be very dependent on the defense for the first quarter.
Well, speaking of the passing game, though, Bo, what about this? Everybody talks about, the Ravens' top 4 or 5 receivers not seeing a lot of field this preseason, injuries, whatever. Bateman's going to be out for a while. Groins are tricky. Obviously, that could, kind of hold back Lamar's development, whatever. But my question, though, is this. J.K. Dobbins, could he pick up some of the slack? Is he putting himself in a position where he could be more of a threat in the passing game to help Lamar, at least earlier in the season?
Oh, he's worked hard at it. I'll say that. I mean, that's been probably his biggest point of emphasis this entire offseason has been work as a receiver. Going back to the spring and the summer, we've seen it on the field. He's made some great catches on the field. He's constantly working on it. And he had a couple of big drops last year. He knows it, and he's owned those. I think what they'd like to do, what they would love to see is if the play breaks down, they'd like to see maybe get that ball to Dobbins in space more often than just have Jackson run, both of which can be very productive. But I think they're more comfortable with Dobbins as a receiver now, and I think he's more comfortable as a receiver now. It's certainly, when he gets the ball in space, he can be tough. So I do like the idea of it, and I think we'll try to see more of it. How that works, whether it's just a check down, they keep working on these screen passes, and we know the Ravens have been they've been flat out bad at operating screen passes consistently. So they're still trying to figure that out. But Dobbins as a receiver is certainly a weapon that I think they'll use more this year. And frankly, they might do it with Gus Edwards as well, who showed a little more as a receiver last year. And he's looked, since coming back from the COVID, the 10-day quarantine he was in, I think he's looked really good. Hasn't played a lot on the field, but in training camp, he's just a big physical guy. And I think he looks quite good.
So as Sarah was mentioning about how strong the defense is, one of the questions about this defense is where they're going to come up with pressure and where they're going to come up with sacks, because gone is Matthew Judon, gone is Ngakoue, and a couple others. In are Justin Houston and rookie Odafe Owe. How have you seen that progressing over the last couple weeks?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because even that, Wink Martindale kind of create a lot of headlines this summer when he said he thought sacks were superficial and that coverage is more important than pressure. And his point was that, and John Harbaugh said it often last year too, they time this stuff. The quarterbacks are getting the ball out faster and faster and faster. So how quickly you get to the quarterback matters, but you have to be able to cover these guys right off the line of scrimmage. To your question about the specifics of the pressure, Odafe Owe looks terrific. He's just big and fast. And I know a lot of people have made a point of the fact that he had no sacks as a senior at Penn State. And that's true, and they know it, but the sacks are going to come with him. I think when you watch him play, he had a play in practice yesterday where he just flat out blew past, I think it was Tyree Phillips, he's probably not a starting right tackle in this league, but that's beside the point. He just blew past him, disrupted the play completely. That's going to happen at some point with him. Justin Houston, 32-year-old, he's obviously accomplished. I think both he and Pernell McPhee will be in a position where they're situationally used in ideal pass rush situations. Always a guy you might see on the field on almost all downs just because he's young, he's fast, and they really like how he defends the run too. Wink Martindale will be creative with the way he gets pressure. All summer we've seen safeties coming in getting sacks. They're not really sacking the quarterback because they're not wanting to touch the quarterback, but you get a sense if this play went on, Chuck Clark had a sack, or Deshaun Elliott had a sack, or Justin Madubuike coming up the middle. That's a defensive lineman, a young defensive lineman who has had a terrific camp. Those guys might generate some pressure inside, which they would also like to see. So getting to the quarterback, I think, will depend on a guy like Owe's speed, and it will depend on Martindale being creative. And then Houston and Pernell McPhee and Jalen Ferguson, Tyus Bowser, he's in the mix as well there. But with the specifics of pressure, I think a lot of it will come down to Wink Martindale's creativity.
Sarah, you mentioned, the defense again. Shaun Wade was traded today, 5th round pick by the Ravens, first of 3 5th-round picks. He's traded to New England for a 2022 7th rounder and a 2023 5th rounder. That's really trading from a surplus in that secondary right now. Could you talk a little bit about how deep this secondary is that the Ravens have? Because Bo said, Wink Martindale says it's about covering people.
Yeah, I think that what it says about the secondary is that it's the deepest in the NFL. I mean, you have these 2 all-pros starting, and then from there, you just keep going and going and going, and it's so deep. And I, would say that the Ravens probably, in April during the draft didn't envision trading away Shaun Wade, but I also don't think that they envisioned that 3 undrafted players, some undrafted this year, some undrafted previously, would play above expectations, play out. And this trade to me confirms that Chris Westry, Nigel Warrior, and Ardarius Washington's more safety, but plays nickel at times, all outperformed Shaun Wade. And I think that, Shaun Wade had that game-sealing interception. I think that's tainting a little bit and Bo, you can speak to this more than I can, but tainting a little bit as to how he's performed in training camp and all summer. And that's what the Ravens look at is, guys stacking things. But man, you have 3 undrafted guys outplaying this 5th rounder. And so the Ravens, it speaks to their reputation also of being able to develop people and find gems in unlikely places. And so The fact that they got a 5th and a 7th, one way you can kind of look at it, again, a 5th round guy and undrafted guys, I know it feels like they should be worlds apart, but I mean, one of these guys was going to have to go. So whether it was Wade or Westry or Warrior or whatever, somebody had to go. And the Ravens figured out a way to go ahead and get that 5th rounder back, find roster flexibility to keep so many guys, another guy that they think is playing well, and then got the 7th on top of it. I think it was a great way for Eric DeCosta to get value down the road when he needed roster flexibility now.
Bo,
No,
before I turn you back over to Gary, go ahead with what you were saying, then I'll follow up. Go ahead.
No, a lot of what Sarah's saying is absolutely right. I mean, it's funny because it seems to go against their idea that you can never have too many corners. They always say you can never have too many corners. The bottom line is on a 53-man roster, you're only allowed to have so many, and they have more than they can use right now. And Sarah's exactly right. These other guys have basically outplayed Shaun Wade. And I thought it was very telling in the Carolina game. Wade only played like 8 or 9 defensive snaps. So that told me a lot about where he stood in the pecking order in this secondary. Personally, I think they would have kept him on the team because they're loyal to draft picks. But that doesn't mean he was playing better than these other people. So if he stays, that means you're essentially going to give up on one of these other guys who probably was playing better. And you might not get him back through waivers because some other team might claim him. By trading Wade, you get another pick in return, as we said, a 5th and a 7th. And you also now free up a roster spot for one of those players that you felt was playing better. Chris Westry is a guy that played a couple games for Dallas last year, has been hurt. They signed him this January, didn't make any kind of headlines when they signed him. He's been one of the most consistent cornerbacks this summer. I mean, he's 6'4". His length really stands out. Sometimes he can get beaten on a double move, or he can, the way he moves and turns, but 6'4" is 6'4".
Yeah.
And, I used to joke, I had a basketball coach friend who always used to say, you can't coach size. And he has the length. So I think that Westry's been a standout of this camp. And so I think she mentioned Ardarius Washington, an undrafted safety who's making a push. Nigel Warrior had been a safety, came in as an undrafted rookie safety last year. And this spring and summer, he's worked almost exclusively as a cornerback. So they're looking at him as well. So suddenly, yeah, you can never have too many corners, but suddenly you can't keep them all on a 53-man roster. Someone's got to go. So I think in the end, that was the impetus to make the move with Wade, because they felt if we can get something for him, great. Because if we don't, something has to give here that is a worse option. Yeah. So I think it worked out well for them.
Real quick, following up on that, on him, Tavon Young is the opposite of Westry. He's smallish, and it hasn't paid off with the injuries he's had. How has he looked so far this year, and what's his condition right now?
I think he's looked good. I mean, you always worry about him because he's been hurt so much, like 2 full seasons and almost a full 3rd season in 4 or 5 NFL seasons. He's obviously been hurt much more than he's been healthy. He slowly was working back to speed over the first couple of weeks or so, but he's looked quite good. Yeah. When he's healthy, he plays bigger than his size.
No question.
I mean,
about it.
He's physical for his size. He can match up with tight ends. He can go against them. It's interesting that the trade of Wade, the one thing that comes up is Wade seemed to be more suited as a slot corner. And so people say, you can't trade away Wade. What happens if Young gets hurt? Well, if Young gets hurt, there's a couple options. One of them is we've seen Marlon Humphrey play a lot of slot corner. And in fact, I think they really like what he does there. Anthony Avert is more suited to play outside. A guy like Ardarius Washington he's only 5'8". He's a small safety, but he's shown up, as Sarah said, he's shown up some in nickel looks and if he's on the team, and I'm not sure he's still going to be on the 53, but if he's on the practice squad and he gets whatever, they have options to play as a backup to Tavon Young if Young can't stay healthy. So far, Young's looked good, and he said he's feeling comfortable. All these guys will say when they come back from a big injury, you can't play scared. Once you have to trust your body and you have to trust your knee or your leg or whatever was hurt. And he's done that. And so far he's looked quite comfortable and he's looked good.
Let me just add to that, Bo, on the slot corner with Marlon Humphrey moving in. I think most media, including me, have kind of been guilty of pushing this narrative that when they move Marlon Humphrey in, it's because they have no other options and they didn't really want to. but I think the Ravens really do like him inside too. In fact, I saw Jeff Zrebeck saying that. He's like, we've pushed the wrong narrative here. The Ravens don't move him in only because they have no other options. Now, of course, they prefer Tavon Young, but they like him in there. They like him in there on top of those in there because he's physical and he's nasty and he can make lots of plays. And so I think this is another move that says the Ravens saying, yeah, we like Marlon there too. And so we don't feel like we're stuck putting him in there. We like him in there sometimes too.
Interesting. Gary, go ahead.
Yeah, guys, Bo, I'll go to you first. I want to talk about Lamar Jackson for a minute here, but I don't want to talk about his play because we haven't seen him play. So we don't kind of know how he's going to play at this point. I want to talk about the COVID situation. And I want to understand what the NFL's / the Ravens policy is towards COVID vaccination. We've seen, especially now since the Pfizer vaccine has been FDA approved, that there are more companies out there in America that are basically mandating their employees to get the vaccine. And if they're not going to get the vaccine, their insurance goes up and this thing and the other thing. Maybe to an NFL football player, that doesn't matter because they make millions of dollars and it doesn't matter if it's going to be another $200 a month or whatever the hell it's going to be. But the question is, from a leadership standpoint and just from a common sense standpoint, is there, like, did the NFLPA not allow the league to mandate vaccinations for players? What's the relationship there? And why would the leader of a team that has a good chance of going to the Super Bowl not get the vaccination to show his team and his city that he's ready to lead?
I mean, I'm the wrong guy to ask about why he didn't get vaccinated, but I will say this. I just saw today the NFL, the NFL would like to have the NFL would like a vaccine mandate. The league would like that. The NFLPA has pushed back on that. John Harbaugh has said it's a personal choice of each player. I think, this is just my own thought here, I think the players should be vaccinated. I'll say this, the NFL made very clear back in April or May, whenever they came out with their protocols and so forth, yes, your vaccination status is your choice, but if you choose not to be vaccinated, life might be kind of miserable for you this year in the context of the league. And that means, the daily testing, it means isolation in certain ways in the building, how you travel. And as we saw today, a couple of guys got fined when the league saw they weren't wearing masks, even for a little Cole Beasley, who's been one of the big outspoken guys against it. He's complaining because he got fined because he didn't wear his mask for 10 steps in the building or whatever. Well, you know what? They've basically made very clear that if you choose to not get vaccinated, it's not going to be as easy. I think the bigger issue, and we've asked Lamar Jackson about this past time when he spoke, he was not asked about it, but the previous time, the one time he kind of evaded the question, and the next time he said he's going to talk to the doctors and see. I don't know why he has opted not to be vaccinated, but to me, the biggest issue is, and we saw today, one of the teams has like 5 guys sent home. There was a vaccinated staff member. I forget which team now. Vaccinated staff member tested positive, and the unvaccinated players were sent home for like a 5-day protocol. This situation, if that could easily happen to an NFL team on, say, a Thursday, and now those players are not available on Sunday, and if that includes your starting quarterback, that's a huge issue. So far, the league hasn't mandated it. John Harbaugh hasn't. He said it's up to each individual player. If I were John Harbaugh, I would strongly be encouraging it. But so far, Lamar Jackson said he doesn't see it being a competitive disadvantage if the quarterback isn't vaccinated. He was asked that specifically one of the last times he spoke. I totally disagree with him. I think it could be a competitive disadvantage. He had to miss one game last year. Now the vaccinations weren't out yet. But if he were to have to miss a game because of a COVID protocol issue by being not vaccinated, it's absolutely a competitive disadvantage. So it's a delicate subject because it's not mandated. I think the NFL would love to have it be mandated, but the Players Association has advised against it.
Let me just jump in. Let me just jump in real quick and make it clear. The league has said, though, that if a team gets so many COVID situations that they would have to not play on a Sunday, that the league's not going to push a game to like a Wednesday or a Thursday this year. They're going to,
Right, they're gonna
it's going to
forfeit.
be a forfeit, right?
That's correct. But again, now part of that, a lot of that would depend on were they vaccinated players that were positive or unvaccinated players were positive,
Right,
because the
okay.
protocols are different for the two groups. And again, there's another problem, because if a vaccinated player were to test positive in the middle of the week, there's every chance that they could still be playing by Sunday. An unvaccinated player almost certainly wouldn't be, and probably any other unvaccinated players or whatever. But you're absolutely right that forfeits are on the table this year. The thinking is that there are enough vaccinated players on every team that a forfeit wouldn't likely to happen. But yeah, absolutely, it could happen.
But even still, and Sarah, what about this? If he's not going to get vaccinated, and it looks like he's not, and I'm not. Look, I'm with Bo. Look, it's a person's choice. I'm not saying he's got to get vaccinated unless there's a mandate. But regardless of that, if he's not going to get vaccinated, he missed COVID last year. He missed games with COVID last year. He missed part of the preseason with COVID this year. He got COVID twice. How smart of it is it for the Ravens to only keep two quarterbacks in that situation? I know that roster spots are valuable, extremely valuable, but shouldn't you have a little bit more insurance on your quarterback if he's not vaccinated?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I thought it was interesting. I had kind of thought McSorley would have been somewhat out of the picture, maybe make the original roster, then maybe put on IR for the 3 weeks or whatever. But John Harbaugh speaking today was like he was very positive about McSorley being able to come back, possibly for week 1. And then he said maybe week 2, but he definitely said around that time. So him saying that put McSorley right back into the picture. Now, the question is can you get somebody like McSorley, who isn't Lamar Jackson, but also isn't a prototypical drop back quarterback, which most teams are using? Do you take the risk and try to say, hey, we've got these new practice squad rules, we can bring up people pretty much at any time, much more flexible, can protect people, although it's not as protected as I once thought it was, but you can kind of protect people. So do you try to slide them in and get them on your practice squad, or do you use the injury to try to maybe figure out a way to put him on IR in the beginning or something, although it doesn't sound like he needs that, because John Harbaugh said today he could be ready possibly by week 1. So, but yeah, you definitely keep that into consideration to say at any moment, even if Lamar doesn't get COVID again, based off of the NFL policies, that could take him out. And so you need to have that third quarterback. Otherwise you might have punter Sam Cook in your emergency situation up sooner than you want. So it definitely makes sense to try to keep 3 around. But maybe you take the chance that you could get McSorley onto your practice squad. I don't know. I don't know if he'd make it there.
I don't think he would pass through, but I don't know. Stan?
It's a fascinating topic, and Bo, I'll ask that of you. Where do you think the Ravens are right now? I know they love the player, Lamar Jackson, but as I understand it, they've been unable to get any sort of traction or discussions going on a contract. Does this scenario that's going on with him being unvaccinated, despite what John Harbaugh may feel about it, is the club as comfortable aligning with him long term, given some of the things he's shown?
I mean, it's not for me to say, but if it were for me to say, I think it would be a significant question. You're about to pay the guy a whole lot of money,
yeah,
and you want to be comfortable with that. I think that, I mean, the other complication with this, and it's a really big one, is that, Lamar Jackson, as far as we know, still doesn't have an agent. And a lot of times the agent is the one that works as that all the contentious stuff happens between the player, the agent, and the team. Yeah. And all the nasty stuff, all the bickering, all of that happens between the agent and the team, and it's filtered away from the player. And so, yeah, the player might hear things, but a lot of that preserves for the most part, good relationship between the organization and the player, and the agent operates as the middleman or the middlewoman who can kind of be the buffer for all of that stuff. Because the team will probably say certain things to try to drive down or convince the agent, this is why we don't want to pay so much. And I'm not talking about just Lamar Jackson. I'm talking about any
Right.
negotiation. It's how negotiations work, right? Well, if Jackson has no agent, suddenly all that is directly between DaCosta, the front office, and Lamar Jackson. And it's, the money involved is so much. I think that's another level of kind of unease about the whole situation. So it's, I mean, to get your original question, I think it has to be one of the things that ends up in the column about the concerns or the questions that come up. And again, that if he's not dealing with an agent, this is going to be something you deal with directly with the player, and you never know how contentious negotiations can get that way. So it's a very fascinating. I think I think agents, one agent, I'm sure agents want to be his agent because there's a lot of money involved.
I would love to be
But
his agent.
I think it's a fascinating kind of nuance to this whole story that he is at the moment unagented.
Sarah, you have any thoughts on that?
Well,
Yeah, go
I'll
ahead.
just say this. Even with what we're talking about now, Lamar Jackson's going to be the quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens for many years to come, whether it happens this offseason or next offseason. He is an MVP player. He definitely does things untraditionally, which is what he does on the field, and he does it off the field. I think he's an excellent leader. I think he's a guy that people want to play with. I think he's a guy that coaches love. I think he loves the game of football. I think he has pure intentions. I think he's more thoughtful than people give him credit for. And so I think it would be crazy to think that the Ravens somehow soured on him in the last couple months. I think that he will still be the quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens many years to come, and I welcome it.
Okay. Let me hop over with you,
Agree.
Sarah, the offensive line, and that's all well said. Ronnie Stanley, are you convinced he'll be ready week 1? And what do you see as the benefits with a solid player like Bradley Bozeman taking over at center?
Yes, I do expect Ronnie Stanley to play week 1. I think the Ravens expect it. I think Ronnie expects it. The only way that wouldn't happen is if there's some sort of setback. From what I understand, he looks strong. I think they've been very conservative and slow rolling him back, but he's been exactly on schedule. I think it's listening to him the other day, it's renewed his love for the game. And he said something like, it just helps you remember that at any moment, this can all be taken away. I'm really happy for him. I'm happy to see him back, and he transforms the offensive line. Outside of Lamar, he's probably the second player that I'd say you can't lose. I thought the Ravens did a good job, with Orlando Brown moving over to kind of get as far as they did into the divisional round. But I think the Ravens lost that playoff game, and a big reason was because of the offensive line. Moving Bradley Bozeman over, I think that's huge. Listen, at any moment, somebody can start losing it when it comes to snaps. I don't think that's going to happen with Bradley Bozeman. Lamar Jackson said the other day that he's harder on himself than Lamar is, or the coaches are. He wants to be exact with his snaps. I think he takes pride in protecting Lamar Jackson and having a good relationship with them there. I think that, and then with Zeitler added, and you've got veterans over there.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about the starting offensive line, even with the question mark at left guard, as long as they stay healthy. You're nervous about the tackle depth for sure. But if Ronnie Stanley stays healthy along with Lamar Jackson, I'm very comfortable with this offense.
Yeah, last year, that really was an irritant to me. It happened in the New England game for a certain reason. It was two different centers, but he must have snapped the ball. I think they must have been 70 to 100 yards that we lost in that game by poor snaps. And then the other center did it in the Buffalo game on a very key play, so it was something I wanted. Gary, go ahead.
Just a comment. I don't know if anybody's noticed this or not. Not that I look at preseason standings all the time, but they played 32 games so far this preseason, 16 in week 1, 16 in week 2. You realize that the AFC is 28-4 against the NFC after 32 preseason games?
I had not realized.
I didn't know that.
Take a look at it. I don't know what it means. Maybe it doesn't mean anything.
It
It's
might
just
help
very-
me in my football pool this season.
Yeah, but it does bring up my question, though, and this is to you, Sarah. Let's zoom out and take a look at the AFC, just in general. The Ravens and the competition that the Ravens face to hopefully get back to that Super Bowl. You know, under Lamar, the regular season record has been tremendous. They're, what are they, 30-7 since he became the starting quarterback. But the kryptonite is the Chiefs. They haven't been able to beat the Chiefs. In fact, nobody's really been able to beat the Chiefs. Is it simply a matter of Mahomes is better than Lamar? Or is there another level that needs to be attained by the Ravens to be able to conquer the Chiefs?
No, I don't think it's just that. I think you've got two quarterbacks who have two very different playing styles, obviously. I think that there's a couple more things in there. I think that with Mahomes, especially what we saw in the Super Bowl with Tampa Bay, the pressure needs to be there. I think we talked about the pressure at the top of the show. I think Bo summed it up really well with the way Wink Martindale is able to generate pressure, here and there or everywhere. But when you do that against somebody like Mahomes, he can start to figure out where your holes are. And so my hope is that when it comes to playing Mahomes, that you keep enough fresh guys that Justin Houston's fresh enough that he can beat a one-on-one and actually put pressure on him without constantly having to blitz, or that Pernell McPhee can do it because he's fresh, or that Justin Owe is, uses his speed and whether he gets a sack or not to try to flush him from the pocket and get him to do things that he doesn't want to do. So I think one is that the defense has to slow him down. I think the Chiefs, are they averaging 33 points against the Ravens?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. And that's the defense. That's the Ravens defense. I don't care that it's Mahomes. You can't allow that to happen. And then on the other side, you don't want to get in a shootout. That's not the Ravens style. It's not the Ravens style. They are a ground and pound, wear you down by the end. And if you can't wear them down by the end, the offensive line needs to keep up. You do have to have enough in the passing game, which they haven't had before. And hopefully Sammy Watkins brings that. Rashad Bateman probably won't be around for that week 3 game. But Sammy Watkins with Hollywood and Mark Andrews, I'm very happy with that lineup. Can that be enough to do it? So no, it's not totally just on the two quarterbacks, although they're huge, huge pieces, obviously.
And then Bo, closer to home in the division, this is probably the most stacked division in the NFL. Who's the team to beat?
I think it's still the Ravens. I do. I think it's the Ravens. I know a lot of people will say it's the Browns. The Browns have a lot of talent, and it looks like they're finally starting to kind of figure it out. And, the Browns have been a trendy pick for 3 or 4 years now. And I think that kind of aggravates the Ravens when they hear every spring and every summer about how the Browns are this and the Browns are that. And I think the players get tired of hearing it. And the bottom line is the Browns need to do it on the field before it really becomes an issue. And for several years there, they flopped in that position. Now it's starting to look with Stefanski and these guys like they're starting to figure out what they're doing. And I think they've got a lot of talent. You mentioned the schedule at the very beginning. That to me is they have that 3-week stretch where they play Cleveland, then they go to Pittsburgh, then they go to Cleveland, 3 weeks in a row.
Huge.
Right.
Yeah, that's it right there.
Who knows how many people will be left standing by the end of that 3-week stretch, right? Those games are going to be wars. They're all, and the Steelers, I am not at all willing to say I'm not pushing the demise of the Steelers one bit. I think Tomlin's a terrific coach. I think we'll see what Roethlisberger has left in the tank. They're going to be pests to the Ravens once again, I think. And the Bengals get Burrow back, and they think they're an up and coming team. I do think it's the best division. And once you factor in the Browns, Steelers, and Ravens, I think they're going to be some great games. But I personally would give the Ravens the edge because they've done it, and more so than the Browns. I will say, coming out of training camp at this point, I am more concerned than I was a month ago, just because, as I wrote last week, this offense is still totally hypothetical. We know what we think it's supposed to be. We know what it's supposed to look like. We know who's supposed to be there, but they haven't been there yet. we're not going to see Rashad Bateman for a while. We should see Sammy Watkins. Marquise Brown has had one practice, and then he left the second practice, and he hasn't practiced since. He's been running sprints. He's been running sprints on a side field for like 3 weeks, and he looks to me really good. So it may be a case where they're not going to bother with him until they're going to put pads on him a week before the season, and they already know what they have with him. Miles Boykin hasn't been around at all. So there's, and the offensive line is finally coming together, and they think they know what they have there. Although, like I said, I think they like Ben Cleveland at guard, but he's had a concussion and he's been out, and Ben Powers has been in there and doing okay. But it's all still kind of hypothetical on the offense. So I heard Marquise Brown say last year, we're number 1 in rushing, we're number 32 in passing. We need more balance. He's totally right. And if they do that, yeah, they can be at the top of the division. But we haven't seen enough of these guys yet to know how realistic it is that they can do it. They think they can do it, and they work hard to do it. But like I said, it's still hypothetical until they can get on the field.
Hey, guys, I'm going to call it a night, but I got a quickie for Bo before we break the huddle. Do you agree with Sarah that we might see Lamar a little bit Saturday against the Redskins?
Yeah, I do, because they waived Kenji Bahar, which told me they're gonna give Jackson a series or two. Now, in the past, again, three preseason games this year instead of 4. In the past, the Ravens generally ramped up their starters from week 1 of preseason through week 3 of preseason, and then they never played in the 4th.
Right.
So in the past, the 3rd preseason game, sometimes the starters have played the entire first half. I feel like every team is more cautious about injuries now with the preseason games. But I do think waiving Kenji Bahar was a sign to me that Jackson's going to play. I suspect he'll play maybe a quarter. If he has a good extended drive to begin the game, maybe that's it. If he has a short 3 and out, maybe comes out for 2nd or 3rd series. But if you've only got him and Huntley available, I mean, you have to, if Huntley goes down in the 2nd quarter, takes a hit and he's down, are you bringing Jackson back in for 3 more quarters? I thought it was actually a little risky to cut Bahar for that exact reason.
Yeah.
But they did it. And when they did it, that tells me Jackson is going to play.
All right. Guys, I really appreciate it. Can we do this again sometime? Sarah,
I'd love
you
to.
in?
Yeah,
You
that'd be
in?
great.
Stuff. Thank you, guys.
Bo, thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
really appreciate it. Again, the Ravens kick off the season in earnest on the 13th of September in Las Vegas on Monday Night Football. I thank you both. Sarah Ellison, formerly of BaltimoreRavens.com. She was the editor and content contributor, and she's a great follow. What's your Twitter handle?
It's at SG Ellison.
At SG Ellison. She's really great. Her insights
You
are
are.
great.
You are excellent.
Bo, what's
Thanks,
your
guys.
Twitter handle?
It's just my last name, @BSMOLKA. Simple.
All right. Appreciate both of you being on with us. I've got to pay this bill one more time by telling you, and you can hang or not hang. Appreciate it again. Sarah Ellison up in Columbus, Ohio, and Bo Smolka here in Baltimore. This Press Box Live has been brought to you by C3 American Exteriors. Go to their website at c3america.com to get a brand new roof for just the cost of your insurance deductible. And as I like to say each and every time we mention C3 America, C3 American, is that, again, if you're a homeowner, you'll have no greater expense than fixing or replacing your roof. And you got to know the people, got to like the people, and trust the people. And those 3 boxes are always checked off with C3 American Exteriors. I do know the owner, one of the owners of the company, and they'll stand behind their work. Guys, again, for Sarah Ellison,
Thank you, Stanley.
for Bo Smolka and Gary Stein, I'm Stan the Fan, and I'll be back Monday night with Ross Grimsley and another guest. By the way, you can still go to our website at pressboxonline.com, look up the video tab and see Ross Grimsley and I talk to Hall of Famer Johnny Bench, which we did this past Monday night. Good night, everybody. Talk to you soon.